skills in Node.js. So we will hear cool stuff about Node.js, Amazon Skills SDK, AWS Lambda. And after him, we have our guest from Russia, Aleksandr Korotaev, who made a game for coders. And he wanted to show us how he did it. From him, we can expect to hear more about RxJS, workers, and eval function. So yeah, give big applause to our speakers, and we can slowly start now.
So good evening to everybody. I'm hoping you are enjoying the beer, more or less. How am I connected to Google? Okay. Okay, let's start. So, developing Amazon Alexa skills in Node.js. Sorry. So, like a few months ago, I would say like 5 or 6, we had a very interesting client who wanted us to develop an Amazon Alexa skill. And this client already had a skill, but he was so interested into display capabilities of this device. And as we are kind of design agency, we had to come up with a very good solution to satisfy this client in a very short period of time. So I was the only person working on that project, and I had like 3 weeks to complete the whole story. And the point of my presentation was to kind of just collect a lot of resources which I can then share to my colleagues or to community. And the whole point of this presentation is to make a concise introduction to Alexa skills. So through this talk, we'll go through Alexa basics. We'll just see what is Alexa, how Alexa responds to certain queries. We'll then cover custom skills. These custom skills are just capabilities you as a developer can add to Alexa. And Alexa has a pretty good platform for you to do so. After that, we will visit development platforms. So we have 2 aspects here. One is AWS, and the other is Alexa Developer Console. Since this is only introduction, I'm assuming that even if somebody wants to start doing something on Alexa, he will probably choose AWS, because by using AWS, you are saving yourself from a lot of trouble.
WSCR Decibel, Frederick, Maryland, for tuning.
Alexa, stop. Spyware, yeah. So after that, we will see dialogues and how we can create conversations with Alexa. And since I mentioned that we had a project which basically targeted display capabilities, we also see what you can do with this display and this bigger device, which is called Amazon Echo Show. As I mentioned, point of this is just to give you a concise overview. Has anybody ever done maybe an Alexa project in here? Okay, then we are on a good track. I'll also share you some of my experiences, because like when you are developing for a new platform, usually you see a lot of problems, and you can spend numerous hours just figuring out what's going on. So I'll try to give you some troubles or introduction to some troubles which bother me a lot. So you can just keep that in mind even if you are not developing or you will develop skill in the future. And we will build and show an example of custom Alexa skill in Node.js. So what is this Amazon Alexa? It's basically a cloud-based voice service. So it is a brain which powers all these devices Amazon produces. Like in recent years, I believe that this is one of the most selling devices ever. So Americans are pretty crazy about these devices. So they tend to buy 5 or 6 devices, just put them in every corner in their house and even in the driving cars and just like talk. I don't know what they're talking with those devices, but it's a pretty trendy device. And Amazon Alexa as a platform supports setting of these custom capabilities, which are called skills. So for you to develop a skill, you first have to have intents. Intents are just actions you want to allow your user to do. So these intents can have optional arguments, which are called slots. And once you have your actions for your skills, you have to provide sample utterances, and you have to link those utterances to intents. Once you have these 2 components, you have to also have an invocation name. So invocation name is just the name which defines a skill. So, and this is basically a name a user has to tell in order for your skill to be activated. And once you have all these 3 things, you also need a cloud-based service. And here you have to have your logic, your basically business logic, which then provides response to those actions. So we are going to build a very tiny skill. It's just a mock-up version of meal ordering skill. You wouldn't believe, but invocation name will be lunch. All code is hosted on GitHub. I will also put this link into comment on a thread we have on GitHub. So if you are trying to model meal ordering skill, you will probably have get orders intent, which gives a user gives the users orders he has meals he has ordered. So some of the utterances you could connect with this action is tell me my orders or what have I ordered. So we have an action, and action basically retrieves order meals, and we have like 2 sentences which are connected to this intent. The thing with Amazon Alexa is that the more utterances for certain intent you list, the overall performance will be better, because you will match more cases and user will be more satisfied. The other intent we will add is get available meals intent, and this intent will just return you a list of available meals for ordering on specific date. And here I added like 1 argument, which is called slots, and this is date type. So this action will get a date argument. And some of the utterances we can attach to this intent is tell me which meals I can order on certain date, or tell me what can I order on certain date. Does this make sense? Or okay, so let's go to the interaction flow. So here you can see this an Alexa device. So customer usually asks Alexa to do something, and this request goes to the Alexa cloud service. Then Alexa performs mapping and analyzes what user has said, and depending on that, it will map certain intents, and those intents will be passed to your cloud-based service. Your cloud-based service then has to convert response, and this response basically goes to the device. When you buy a device, you usually have to install an Amazon app, and this app is just like companion app, which then allows you to install certain skills on your device. It also allows you to receive a UI, like a graphical representation of response, and this graphical representation is called card. So to build a custom service on AWS, we'll show how. I mean, I was using Lambda. So Lambda, I hope you are more or less familiar with it. It's just like a platform which allows you to execute some arbitrary piece of code. S3 is used because in order for you to be able to deploy code to Lambda, you have to first zip it, and then you have to link Lambda to the code in S3. And also, the best practice when you are kind of deploying this thing is to have a separate user which only has an access to specified Lambda and specified S3 bucket. So let's see AWS configuration and Alexa developer console. So on AWS, as I mentioned, we have a Lambda instance. So you can see I have one Lambda function which is called launch Alexa. And for this Lambda function to be Alexa, to responding to Alexa skills, you have to attach this trigger. So trigger is called Alexa skills kit. And also you have to provide your skills ID into configuration. So AWS is doing some kind of verification that this Lambda function is responding to correct skill. Apart from that, as I mentioned, it's best to have a separate user, and this user will just give you keys to deploy JS code and zip to Lambda. So if you look to repo, you will see that we have a deploy folder. So this deploy is just it's better. Just a second. Okay, so it's just like a commander program which basically zips and deploys code, and it's using .10 configuration, and it's just a tedious part for you, which you must have in order to deploy to S3. So all deploy is done through this deploy folder. So let's go to console. So once you register as a developer, you get an access to this Alexa developer console, and you have usually when you log in, you have a list of your skills, and let's pick this launch skill. I created this before just not to waste a lot of time on tedious parts. And here you can see that we have intents. As I mentioned, like these are actions our skill responds on. You can see a lot of these Amazon prefixed intents. We will come back to that later. But you can also see one intent we have defined. And this intent, it's called get orders intent. I will also return back to this, but it's just to get a sense how the whole things look. You just have like a list of intents, and you also have a save and build model. So apart from that, once you create a skill, you will have an endpoint. And here you can see that I have linked the Lambda function we previously saw in AWS console. And that's it from configuration. Any questions on this so far? Okay. Okay, so let's just see this in action. So for now, we won't trigger Alexa device, but we will trigger a debugger. So console has a test tab. Alexa, stop. Which allows you to test your skill. So let's invoke the skill we have created. So I did perform a deploy. Okay, so I did. Let's invoke launch. So if you want to start developing, you even don't have to have a device. So you can just go to console and start from there. So you can see that that we have invoked the skill. And first thing you see that we have request and response. So every interaction is just JSON. So nothing fancy in there. You will see that we have, in response, we usually have a response object. We have like fields like output speech and reprompt and certain other stuff. And in the request, we have more info. You can always get like request, which is basically a detail object of the request. Here we will later see slots and all other stuff. So this is basically the object we are most interested in when we are handling an action. So let's go back to slides. So this response object has output speech, has reprompt. Reprompt is just a text which Alexa will repeat once if a user doesn't tell anything to her. And we also have one field which is called directives, and these directives just specify device level actions. And those level actions are usually targeting a particular interface. We will later on see that we have to use directives in order to render some content on display. Okay, let's see initial skill code. So this skill code has been deployed to AWS, and we have Alexa folder and handlers. So in index.js, we are basically exporting a skill object, which is then wrapped in the handler, and each time we have an action, this skill will handle an event. So let's just see how we are handling intents. Okay, it's not working. Usually, intents are handling by objects which are implementing interface which has two methods. So they have can handle method and they also have handle method. We will cover these two aspects in more detail later on. But once, if we go back to index, you see that we are just enumerating a lot of these handlers. So each handler has to tell on a certain request if he can handle certain action. So you can see that this launch request intent handler is just handling launch requests. So we have request object, which I mentioned before on debugger, and this launch request intent is just handling launch requests, nothing else. And once you are in the handler, you usually get this handler input object, which is very useful object, and this object allows you to build a response. So here you can see that we have set speak field in response, and we also have set reprompt field in response, and get response basically creates response object. So now we can cover those intents which had Amazon prefix. So these are all built-in intents, which means that you don't have to add any utterances to invoke them. So Amazon has a set of predefined utterances which invoke these built-in intents. I haven't covered any of intents which cover books, weather, or something else. I have only covered standard built-in intents, and these are intents for general actions like stopping, canceling, or asking for help. And these standard built-in intents cannot use slots, so that you cannot give any arguments to them. And you can see that in initial code, we have a help handler, which is handling standard built-in intent, and we also have stop. So let's just invoke Alexa. Alexa, open lunch. Alexa, open lunch.
Welcome to Lunch Skill. What can I do for you?
What can I say?
Please, say that again.
What can I say?
Please, say that again.
What can I say?
Please, say that again.
Help.
Here are some of the things you can ask me. Tell me my orders. Order a meal. Tell me which meals I can order for tomorrow. What can I do for you?
Stop.
Goodbye and talk to you later.
So you can see that this help intent provides sample utterances, and it's just basically handling this built-in intent. And as before, we built response object providing speech text and reprompt message. So as I mentioned, request handlers are usually implementing this interface. You have to have handle and you have to have handle method. So you can either return a promise or you can just return a value. So as I mentioned also, handlers are receiving this handler input, and this is basically a very, very useful object which provides us two entities which are very important. One is request envelope, and this request envelope just contains the entire request body which is sent to skill, and we also have response builder which builds responses. So let's create one custom intent. So usually, like when you're zipping Node.js code, it takes a bit too long, but okay, I have to have an iOS profile. So now we will support our custom intent, and this intent will just return orders. So I already have intent created in a builder, and we have the sample utterance we can say to invoke this intent. So just a second. Alexa, open lunch.
Welcome to Lunch Scale. What can I do for you?
Tell me my orders.
For tomorrow, you have ordered chili con carne meatballs with sweet peppers and black beans. For Friday, you have ordered melted mustard DB.
So
what else can I help you with?
Stop. So here we are just simulating
Please, say that again.
Stop. So here we are just simulating the API call, and this, as I mentioned, handlers can be asynchronous, so you can return a promise, and here we...
Please, say that again.
Stop.
Goodbye and talk to you later.
So we are just concatenating orders and returning them as a speech text. So nothing fancy here yet. So let me just show you one stupid error which can occur to you and which can cause you a lot of headaches. So let's assume that in the orders you return and, like a special character, and let's see what happens. So we also have added an error handler, which is basically handling all errors which occur in your skill. But from time to time, this is not useful at all. So we'll now see one example of that. So now when I invoke Alexa, it will crash. And in the CloudWatch, we won't find any detail about crash at all. Alexa, open lunch.
Welcome to Lunch Scale. What can I do for you?
Tell me my orders.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
So if we go to logs, we'll see that the error handler said unable to find a suitable request handler. So the thing here is that you have to understand that this is request-response model. So once your custom service gives some response, it goes to Alexa Cloud. And if you give Alexa Cloud a bad character, like I did in this example, it will just crash the service, and you won't have access to error logs, which is pretty dumb if you ask me. But things like this can happen, and if you find something similar, probably a few hours. Like, I mean, it's dumb, but you get a point. You have a request-response model, and when it goes to cloud, you just cannot tell if error occurred. Okay, let's go to next. So right now we have like just one action, and this action is not interesting at all. So we would like to have a dialogue. We would like to have a conversation with Alexa, and usually when you want some kind of conversation, you want either.
I'm not sure.
Let me just. Usually when you are doing some kind of conversation, you want to collect some arguments you want to pass to skill. And there are two approaches you can do so. One is called delegate, another is called elicit slot. So if you can recall, we did mention directives, and these are two examples of directives. So we will give a command to Alexa to do some action on a certain interface. So let's create a new intent. So we'll call this get available meals. And once you create an intent, you have to provide sample utterances. So we'll go with this one first. I will also add slot, which will be date. And we want this to be a date type. So when you give a type to slot, this is like built-in type. So AWS will collect the date and will give you a string for that. So if I say tomorrow or Friday, Amazon will transform this into string. Okay, so let's just add one additional utterance. And when you're performing dialogues, you can mark certain slots as required. So if we go to edit dialog, we can mark this as required to fulfill the intent. And let's say that Alexa has to ask on which date. If a user doesn't tell a date, we want Alexa to ask on which date. And you also have to provide a mapping for users. So let's say that user will just say date here. Okay, add. So we added this. I also have to go to code. Okay. So once you have these things ready, so we did provide a speech prompt, we did provide a user utterance, and we did create this intent. You have to say model, and you have to build it. Okay, so model is building. If we go to available meals, you can see that now we have dialog state. And if user doesn't tell all required arguments, this won't be completed, and you can just tell Alexa to pull the argument from the user. So we added here add delegate directive. So this will prompt the user to tell the value for a certain argument. So let's test this. Alexa, Okay, I have to turn. Alexa, open lunch. Alexa, open lunch.
Welcome to Lunch Scale. What can I do for you?
Tell me which meals I can order.
On which date?
Tomorrow.
Here are the meals you can order tomorrow.
So-
chili con carne meatballs with sweet peppers and black beans. Pork
So
meatballs,
you get a point. So you
mustard,
can
ragu,
just
some
provide
vegetarian
which
lasagna.
slots are required,
What else can I help you with?
and just make Alexa pull the information for you. Sometimes
Here are the meals you can order tomorrow. Chili con carne meatballs with
Alexa.
sweet peppers and black beans.
Alexa.
Pork meatball.
stop.
Goodbye and talk to you later.
So you can push Alexa to pull the information from you, and I don't know if somebody is like a more designer, not so engineer, so he can always provide the arguments or prompts for each of the slots. But if you are trying to do some like custom solution, then you can use illicit slot directive. So let's show an example with this. So let's see what has changed. So we also are now querying dialog state, but we are targeting values of slots. So we can take control here, and we can just tell Alexa, okay, Alexa, pull the value for this slot. So this is just a basic example, but I think when you combine these two directives, you can come up with more complex dialogues and more appealing dialogues to user. But this is just a raw example of this, of how you can pull this information from the user. So let's just now invoke. Alexa, open lunch.
Welcome to Lunch Scale. What can I do for you?
Tell me which meals I can order.
For tomorrow, you have ordered chili con carne meatballs with sweet peppers and black beans.
So
For Friday, you have ordered melted mustard DB. What else can I help you with?
tell me which meals I have ordered.
When?
Okay, you can see that we have changed the prompt tomorrow.
Here are the meals you can order
You can see
tomorrow.
that we changed,
Chili con carne
we did
meatballs
change.
with
So
sweet peppers and
we are
black
basically
beans.
pushing
Pork
speak.
meatballs, melted mustard DB,
Alexa, stop.
cold ragu, some vegetarian
Alexa.
lasagna. What else can I help you with?
Stop. So
Here are the meals you can order tomorrow. Chili con carne meatballs with sweet peppers and black
Alexa.
beans. Pork meatballs,
Alexa.
melted mustard
Alexa.
DB, goat ragu, some vegetarian lasagna.
Alexa,
What else can I help you with?
stop.
Goodbye and talk to you later.
There's too much noise, so I'm just figuring out she's pretty confused. So when you're doing this from code, you can then take, you can basically perform action from code. Somebody would prefer this way. Some other would prefer just doing this in Builder. It depends. So, okay, so you can also create a custom slot types, and by doing this, you just match a set of your values to a set of phrases user can tell. And I don't know, maybe you will encounter this, but to get the value, you would have to do it differently from built-in types. So you just have to do a lot of crazy magic to get your real value. Okay, so let's now target the display capabilities of Echo devices. As you can see, this device has a display. The ability of these devices currently is quite limited. So you have to use one of predefined templates, and we have two types. One is body, and the other one is a list template. And this display is quite bright. So when I was working with a designer, we were like testing different background images, and we had to and the opacity we were pushing onto the device was larger than 0.5. So you have to add a lot of opacity for for your other content to be presented well on this device. So you also have one font and one color. And usually if images are greater than 300 kilobytes, you will see a delay in response. So you will see that Alexa starts responding, but the background image will be a default one. And then after, I don't know, few seconds, you will get the image. But if you think about it, like 300 kilobytes it's not that big deal. But this device has certain limits, and it's not so friendly to work with the display at all. So let's see how you can render a template on Amazon Echo Show. So what we will do now is we will add a template to get available meals intent. And we first test if the device supports the display. If it supports, we create a template. A template we will be using for this is list template. So apart from showing images and text, it also allows you to perform an action. So you can click on certain item. Alexa, open lunch.
Welcome to Lunch Scale. What can I do for you?
Tell me which meals I can order.
When?
Tomorrow. So
Here are the meals you can order tomorrow. Chili con carne meatballs.
So you can see that there is a list of items on the screen.
Nothing mustard beef. Go dry to summer vegetarian lasagna. What else can I help you with?
Stop.
Goodbye and talk to you later.
So this is how this list template looks. So you get usually a text, and you can add secondary and ternary text. To be honest, like if you open a built-in skill, so this is how a built-in skill looks like, and you can see that they fitted like 1, 2, 3, 4, almost 5 items. So when you're doing this template thing, you won't be able to achieve the same effect. So they're just keeping the better stuff for themselves. And you can see that my images are quite small, so they're not wider than these ones. And I also tried like reducing the text size and all other tricks, but the thing is that you cannot fit more than 3 items on the screen, which is quite, I don't know, it's just bad. Like when you see all those built-in skills, like this one, they look like amazing, and when your clients see all the crazy stuff Amazon is doing natively, and then you always have that question, why we cannot do animation like the other skill has it? Because you just cannot do these things with templates. So templates are pretty limited. And the other thing which you cannot do on this template is you cannot remove these silly numbers. So they have to be there, and you just have to ignore them, and that's it. So as I mentioned, you can also add certain actions on a screen. So let's show an example with that. So now we will add a capability for a user to click on a certain item, and we will present the details of selected meal on the screen. So, Alexa, open lunch.
Welcome to Lunch Scale. What can I do for you?
Tell me which meals I can order.
When?
Tomorrow.
Here are the meals you can order tomorrow. Chili con carne meatballs
So
with sweet peppers
if you
and
now
black
click,
beans, pork meat. Here are the details for pork meatballs. 591 calories. Fat,
so
15.7 grams. Carbs,
it just
62.2 grams.
so
Protein,
this is the
49.9
template we are rendering.
grams.
Alexa,
Sugars, 15.6 grams.
Alexa, stop.
Goodbye,
So,
and talk to you later.
for the details, I have used body template too. When you're handling this click, it's not usual intent, and you have to have something which is called like an element selected intent handler. And you can see that when a user clicks, we get a new request with a type of element selected. We can think about this as an intent, but this is basically not intent because you won't see it in a builder. If you go to builder, it won't be here. And this element selected intent just passes control to meal details intent handler, and this meal details just gives you body template too with details. And here also, if you kind of want to verify that this handler should handle this request, you can always look at this token. So each of the items in the list can have token, and on this token you can perform certain validation. If you see the appearance of this, if you visit documentation, you won't even find any clue how to do this. And here you can use one pretty old trick, and that is just insert markup. So Alexa allows you to render a rich text, but finding any information on how you can utilize this is just impossible. So you can use good old breaks and fonts and try to kind of optimize your appearance. Usually when you're doing this kind of stuff, you'll probably have to build a few times and iterate over it to achieve anything appealing. So apart from that, I believe that I have covered everything which regards the templates and our experiences. And some of the things we haven't covered today are session and DB storage. So Alexa SDK has built-in support for session storage and also for DynamoDB. So the only thing you have to do is just allow your Lambda to access a certain DynamoDB instance, and it's just basically plug and play. So you can give your skill access to DynamoDB, and you can have DB storage working out of the box. Also, these devices can do audio and video playing, but haven't tried that feature yet. So you can also use them if you have, I don't know, like video playing skill or something else. So thank you for attending this presentation. Do you maybe have any questions regarding this?
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Mate. Thank you, Alexa. Alex, you're next. So yeah, feel free to stay on beer or 2 or 9 after we're finished.
Oh, perfect.
So, do you need internet?
Yes, I have internet. I already connected. Yeah.
Okay. You want to speak on this or on mic?
Give me one.
So up next is Alex. He will show us his browser game for coders. Yeah, that's it.
Hello, guys. I'm not so perfect English speaker like you. Feel free. We are the same. And today I want to tell you about how I made a game for JavaScript developers and for developers at all. A game where you can code on JavaScript and make something like a script, like artificial intellect for your battle, for your units. And you can battle with another man, with the opportunity, with your opponent that are JavaScript coder too. And what about me? I worked on a huge internet bank in Russia. You can see me in GitHub or Twitter, and also I am a local front-end organizer in my city in St. Petersburg in Russia. I can talk with you after meetup about meetups in Russia if you're interested. And with it, I am podcaster and lover of meetup, like you. And what is it game? For start, you should choose unit, sum of 6 units with different capabilities, with different numbers, and it's a typical RPG units. After that, you can try to write some code, you can debug it. I have editor for this, and you can launch some code and debug this. After that, I can tell you about code should run only once, and it's something like script for your army. You just write script for your army, and it's typical JavaScript. And it's simple JavaScript, as simple as it's possible. And I tried to make it possible. And I want to tell you about how I made possible API for players and something like that. And see this game in action. It's a presentation of my game. We can play in this after meetup if you want. And you can choose unit. You can try to add some code. You can launch some code, use some API for unit to move unit to make the battle. And this is a battle between 2 players. All is so simple. And it's a game for front-end conferences. And which technologies I choose? Fuzzer, it's the most popular game engine on JavaScript ever. It's the biggest, highest, with a lot of tools, with a lot of technologies, and after that I choose Ace editor. It's the oldest, I guess, web editor that looks like a Sublime editor or your editor that you feed. And I choose RxJS. That is a very beautiful library to manage your events like sequence, like Lodash for events, or underscore for events. It's very popular libraries. And I choose Preact for render HTML, and as in native technologies, workers and WebSockets. And what about games for programmers? Because I want to tell you about game for programmer. Sometimes you can think about it's something like this. Just code a lot with a lot of numbers, digits, so on and so on. But I want to make a game with fun. A game for 15 minutes only, for interval acts between 2 talks on conferences. And I know only 2 games that looks like mine. It's Elevator Saga. You can control elevators by JavaScript, or scripts. You can control biological systems on JavaScript. And my game. What is my motivation? This game looks like a battle on JavaScript. It's because everyone wants to battle, because everyone wants to make matches between each other on the conference. And typical for Russian conference, it's something like type some sentences, answer for some words, and get vacancies. It's not so good, and I want to make a game and make battle. I want to make the center of attention conference, and I think it was a very cool stand for a bank, because bank it looks not so interesting, but game from bank looks more interesting for me. And exactly is gamification. And how it looks at the first conference that we have in Russia, it's not so big conference, but it's first time of my game. I spent only 3 weeks for them. It's totally MVP. It was not so brilliant, but it works. Just main screen on the center, left and right player controllers. And we have WebSocket connections to the server. Server has storage, has state, and can make connections to another clients to share state to make them workable. Two players play, and watchers can see the main screen to see the battle, to see the coding, and after that to see the battle. And what is gamification? Gamification is a very popular process. I don't know about Europe, but in Russia it is. You can bring some coins to the your user of your system, and you can push your user through your path, through the path that you need. And user thinks about he plays in game, but he goes through your scenario, and it's some motivation through the gamification. And first story that I want to say about, it's about I have no time for them, because we have only 3 weeks for the first conference, and main idea of this game was invented by me for the 5 minutes, just 5 minutes for idea, because my director told me about, hey Alex, could you please invent something for conference, something new, something interesting, something drive. And I thought about, hey, we can make a coding game with a battle, a coding game for the 2 players that can battle, and it's all. And after that, I get only 4 hours per day, 4 hours of my rest, 4 hours of my wife, and so on and so on. And only 21 days for only 3 weeks to realization to the conference. And what's the main parts of first MVP? It's about in technologies exactly. It's called editor. It's Ace editor. Battle screen was on Phaser. Phaser.js. It's most popular game engine, and Node.js for server. I just not used some frameworks on Node.js at first, but after that I changed my opinion. And what is basic models? It's a render, sandbox for JavaScript evaluation, and state sharing from the server. And server shares the states between connected clients. And what about JavaScript sandbox? It's most most complete task for me, because I need to make some people are coding in this game, make some code for the units, debug this code, and after that go to the main screen, and 2 user codes should battle between each other. And how to make it unsafe, because JavaScript is not safe language, and it's have a lot of problems with it, because we need some isolation, we need to make some unit API to make user to give user some control with units, and we need support for asynchronous code, because all actions of units was asynchronous. For example, you can go something, you can attack, and you wait for the end of animation. It's asynchronous. And what it looks from start. Oh, for example, bets, for me, it's ugliest way to make async code on JavaScript and use promises with chaining of then. Sometimes it's not so bad, but in this case, for coders with different levels, and not only JavaScript coders, it can be complex. It's a very complex task for some players, and you can try to add some for conditions or loops for them, and it's really strange, and it was really weird. it became weird. And better solution is go to the async await. Async await looks better, but I think better way, it's a magic way. Just remove this async await, just make code synchronous. But under the hood, code became asynchronous. And how it works, how I did it. At start, we need to solve first problem, interpretation. How to interpret our JavaScript code? The first common way is to make something like eval plus with operator to make this code workable with unit API, with some context. This code should work with some context. And eval plus with looks very common for this situation. But we have problems with it because we have a lot of types of harmful code. Harmful code that cannot be stopped. In case of alert or prompt, you can stop them simply, but with while true or an endless for loop, you cannot stop it. You cannot stop this because JavaScript is have only one main thread for them if you use eval. And in this case, eval is evil. It's totally evil. It's concentrate evil. Don't use eval, please. In this case, looks like my idea was go to the down, and I don't know how to say about good eval. But what about reinvent eval? What about make eval on different technologies? What about make some workers with operator and with proxy, and we can make eval that we need, eval from start, eval from scratch. And why workers? As you know, worker have a separate thread for evaluation. It means that when you create new worker, you create new separate thread, separate with main thread. And the key feature of worker, you can close worker manually from main thread. And it means that if you make some code, something like while true in worker, you can stop worker with this code without any problems, without any lags, just by using set timeout. For example, I close the worker after 1 second of evaluation if it's not response. And it works for me, and it's a better solution than eval at first. What about hello worker code? What we need to run worker? Run was our first worker. We just need to send some pass, some HTTP pass to the script.js to the worker constructor. But it's not so good way for me to use to get some user code, some generated code, some code from string. I need code from string, not from HTTP. And I know how I can show you how it can make. For example, you can make a blob from your custom code, and you can create object URL from your blob, and you can pass your code URL to the worker. It works not only with worker, it works with images, with iframes, with all stuff that can get a SRC attribute. That can get HTTP queries. You can use just blob to make your code from string in worker, and it works. It's perfect. And after that, you can add some RxJS. Why RxJS? Because you start worked with a lot of asynchronous events. Because worker is a totally asynchronous entity. You should listen for events to know that workers send something to you, or you should say, and in case if you want to send something to worker. And my advice to you to start using RxJS from some simple functions. For example, you just create event listener from worker message and map it to JSON parse. It's just send you object of parsed data to message stream. Message stream, it's a stream of RxJS stream. And we need to timer of 1 second to close our worker if it works too long. And we need to make a timeout to close it. And after that, we can just merge all streams, these both streams, timeout close and message stream. And it means that merge operator can get first of them and react of all of the streams. And looks like if your message can go after the timeout close was first. But if your message go on first, earlier than timeout close, you can get a message stream. And it means that we can make common code for both situations, that worker runs so long and when worker works correct. We can reject or with error or resolve with success result. It's a common way for RxJS to use it, how to use it to make your code more declarative, more simpler. And what is Unit API? How to make a Unit API workable like this? Because for my proposal, guys, not only not from JavaScript world only, can pass the script. For example, some C programmer or Java programmer can see this code and go, okay, I get it. I can write some code like this, and I can understand this. It's not only JavaScript, it's a common code for a lot of languages. And I got the simplest API from JavaScript to make this game accessible not only JavaScript, not only for JavaScripters. And what about our context? How to make this code workable in context with Unit API? First solution is to get some with and pass object to make something like unit API.goTo, unit API.should. To make it simpler, just inject user code inside of with operator. But we need eval again. Eval have different phases. For example, for digit, it's too harmful for us too. Just advice, for digit is too harmful for us, like a new function, because it's equal to new function operator too. New function can be equal as eval operator. And all of this operator is eval operators, and user can make fetch queries to another sites or make some harmful code, make evals, stolen your cookie, and a lot of bad things. And we need to make eval is not workable for us. And what we need for this? It's so simple. Just mind about with operator, with object. It can be harmful because if a virtual machine can find some variable in scope, it can go deeper to the root scope and found eval operator, for example. But if you use with proxy, with newest proxy API, we can make a solid wall for these queries to make it workable. And what I mean? I think that you can make something like safe API using proxy. For example, you have different hooks for proxy that can be applicable for whole proxy object. For example, you can use has hook and make them return only true for all. It means that if we try to go to our safe API eval function, we can go to this safe API and ask about it. Do you have eval function? It says about yes, I have. And it means that we make a little lie to make eval is undefined. And after that, we have another problem. It's maybe it's not so clever code, but it works. It means that if we use with array, we can use array methods. Array methods like functions in global scope, in scope of with. and it means that we use unscopable values. And I was really wondering about newest symbol was invented for a very old with operator. Simple unscopable, that's the newest symbol for very old operator with. And what it means? It means that we can filter our values with this symbol, and we can send to caller only APIs that we have in scope, not only in prototype, not only in other places, just in whole object, just object properties or attributes. For example, you have vulnerability of them. Player can type toString and see all of your object, all value of, and see your sandbox object. It's a vulnerability for us. It's unsafe, and we need to make some defense of them. And what happens with if we use with plus proxy? Virtual user can type eval. Virtual machine go to the unit API, try to ask about eval in unit API. Unit API say true, and we got undefined is not a function. It's a good result for us, better than eval that can be called. And after that, we should clean worker environment. Worker has same environment, different with the window object. It's this self, post message, on message, and so on and so on. It's the file AP2. It looks so harmful for us too, and we need to clean this work environment. And it means that we need to patch this object. Just go through the whole case of this and patch it, just delete it, just clean it. But we have at least prototype of this, then all this post message or file API is accessible, and we can wrap our user codes to the function with changed scope using call function. Just make some egg, funny egg for the player that can be accessed, that try to access this. And okay, say hi to this player. I think that you should pass some funny things in your code for players who wants to hack you. And what about our useful functions that we really need? Because we already clean all this. We already clean all scopes, and we cannot whole object without anything. But we need to use mass, parse int, console log, or something like that for coding, because it's a normal function. It's not harmful functions. And looks like we need to make something like whitelist for our API. We need to patch our unit API with a list of our whitelisted APIs. Console, mat, parse int, object, something like that. And after that, we can use try catch for our code to react on some user errors, to pass errors to the user. And we need to make something like custom console for them, because if you, in case of you write some code, you have sometimes errors, and sometimes you need debug messages, you need to access it, and you need console log to debug it. But it's not so good, I think, to say user or say your player, just open console, don't worry, it's normal. We can use some simple diff that can emulate console with console log, and it was game. It's normal for game, I think. It's normal for coding game to make your own console with your own rules. And we just patch all console methods then we know. And patch method made some magic with console. It saved native method to the variable and wrap it to the post message function. Console method just now it's post message to the main thread to say to main thread code to user wants to use console for some operations, use some debug messages, just show it to him. And what to be with async functions? I have only 3 weeks to realize it, and I think that I cannot make a worker thread that can be accessible to whole battle, to the buttons on the all times. And I get a result about I need to make it simpler as it possible to fit in time, to make a game for player, but not problems for me. And it means that I made API that returns only actions like in Redux. Actions like in Redux can be stackable in arrays, and all units can be accessible to this stack of actions to use it as a script to go through the battle and fight, attack between each other. How it looks, it's a list of actions. It's a result of my worker. Worker just ran some codes, and after that it died. And all that you need is a script for our units. It's a simpler way to make skippable behaviors for your units on the battle, because it's not so possible to make in 3 weeks, I guess, APIs that can be workable with battle in real time, because worker with real time works working with real time battle. It's not so simple question. It needs more time to implement, more time to think about it, and simplest way to evaluate some code before the battle. And I make isolated workers for all of units, because you shouldn't pass some variables to units, pass some states, just isolate workers for all units. And it means that if code for one unit is fault, another sites can be workable. And I have a very unpredictable result with mass random. It was surprised me a lot, because I have only 1 day to realize it, 1 day to the conference, 1 day to my win or my lose, and I think about mass random is a random. It's a problem for me, but why? For example, you have IDs of units of enemy that can be attacked in a random position, in a random sequence. You should you want to shoot a random enemy unit, and you write code, use some write code for them using mass random. Looks normally maybe, but mass random result it's different. It's normal exactly. But how it can look different players? It looks that different players get different battle results, and it means that some players cannot have prizes, because some of them get a result of left as win, another one get a result that right as win, and it's inconsistent. It's a problem for me, and I can get a lot of hateful players that can get forks and torches and go to me. It's a bad guy that can and we cannot get our prizes. It's a problem. And what I get just for one evening, I just Google, and for the one evening I realized salted random function. Because we need to add some salt to random to make it predictable. But we need to make it unpredictable for player. Player should know about he used mass random and get a random result for any cases. But for any battle, but for same battle, we need same results. And how it looks, how we did. I just get from Google. I get this function with strange name, linear current generator. It's a simpler mass random function that I found. It's very simple because you just need to pass some seed to this code, and seed was got from user code. It's example. To get a random result, I should get user code and go through the simple, reduce simples, reduce char codes, and get the value not more than this big number. And I got sold. And after that, I can make my mass random function for this battle. And if some of players changed the code, mass random changed the sorted results, and we get another random function. But it works for the same battle, for the a lot of watchers that can go to the battle, see the result, and see that all battles in all clients is consistent. And at the end, I want to show you all code that you need to make JavaScript very safe. It's a code to make a safe worker to your JavaScript code. It's a lot of code. You should use a string to make your code unworkable. It's not so good, but JavaScript became safety. It's a really safety sandbox for JavaScript. And what about server? I want to talk to you about why I choose RxJS for them. Because on my work, I am Angular developer. All Angular developers works with RxJS, and it's common for us. It's not so scary to work with RxJS. For example, we have 4 roles for different connected clients. It's a left player, right player, it's a watchers that see the battle, and it's admin. And we need a source of truth for our state and its server. It means that when left player sends changing of state and name to the server, server mutates full state object and sends to all connected clients full state again. And it means that if your server can be your source of truth, but you need to filter your queries, filter your roles, because it's a game for programmers, and some programmers want to hack you. You need to make some defense of them. RxJS works very good with events, with async queries, with async events, and it looks that you should wait for similar events to make server consistent, to make consistent state. And how it works with RxJS? For example, we need callback to left player is ready and right player is ready. We can just filter socket messages to find where left player is ready and right player is ready too, and use the operator that the operator for join that looks like promise all. It's very simple, just another name, and you can wait for left is ready and right is ready and make your callback event. Make a state ready. It's very simple, it's declarative. My code became declarative when I use RxJS for events, and I advise you to RxJS to make declarative code for events too. It's and another example, it's about state filtration. For example, sometimes player can make can try to make some hacks for a game. Try to change state between each other because it's JavaScript developers, because it's front-end developers, and you need to make state filtration to prevent this. For the start, I realized roles. Different roles is the different classes that extends client class. What is a client? Client is a connection pool. It's a pool of connections that connected with by one role. One connection pool for left player, for right player, for watchers, for admin, and in difference, left player and right player can have only one connection, but watchers can have a lot of connections and admins too. And we have only one subject that can emit our socket messages from the client. Is unsafe message subject. It's event emitter for our socket messages from the client. It's unsafe, and I named you as unsafe. How to filter it? We just realize on message getter for all clients and make filtration. Make filtration for what? For example, left player can make only state type event. Only can pass only event with type of state. And we need to filter by this type. After that, we need to filter all data that can be harmful for right player, for all room, and we can get our state left from all data that player sends and make another object with the correct data, and player cannot access to right state of to state of right player, and we can filter our messages in declarative way and just makes API for all connected clients as on message. We just go to the room class. Room is a scope for our left player, right player, and watchers and admin. It's a battle room, and we just use it as simple as possible. Just subscribe to the on message stream with already secured messages. And it's simplest way to make a declarative security for our WebSocket connections, because we cannot hope in user. We can hope that user can be correct, can be polite. User should be hacked you. User should be want to make some fun with this game because it's programmer. And what about RxJS on client? RxJS on client emits events from socket 2 and filters it too. And how it works? For example, we need some callback to changes only on right army. Only on right army, we just listen to socket message using pipes operator. We need to filter some right state changes and get only right army using plug operator. Then get some data from the object using pass right army. And after that, you can subscribe to this stream and get only state of right army. Nothing only needed to you. It's declarative way to work with your events. And your code became simpler with it. Became declarative, and you can make a lot of beautiful things using RxJS just in declarative way. And what about multiplayer? I told about my first MVP was made for only 2 players and watchers in the room, like you in the screen. And after that, I get another advice from my director to make this game for the tournament in our bank, to the Day of Programmer. And we made this tournament, but I need, but I have only 21 days too for them. At least 21 days to make to go from the single player to multiplayer with different rooms. It means that I changed my architecture from the structure of left-right player in my screen to the rooms. And I made a lot of, I can make parallel rooms with parallel battles, and I made rooms list, I made leaderboard because we need to make prizes to my colleagues for the battle results. And it was a funny time to make this workable. It was scariest time for me because I get a lot of problems for the one at the last day, at the first day of this tournament, and it was 3 days of hell for me. But it was a brilliant experience for me, and I want to advise you about my experience, what I get from that. And what about JavaScript game dev at all? I want to say about JavaScript game dev is not business applications game dev, because I worked in bank, I was an Angular developer, and for me it's not so problem to make something own solutions, for example, authorization, model windows. It's absolutely no problem to make my own solutions if solutions that we already have is not fits me, not fits my project. And in game development, we have absolutely another picture. For example, native technologies in game development is absolutely too much to start, because look on WebGL maybe. You cannot make your game on WebGL from start if you don't know about OpenGL, if you don't know about three-dimensional development, three-dimensional graphics, if you don't know about something about geometry, and it means that you should get your framework. And I get most popular game framework ever, it's Fuzzer. But Fuzzer, it's a 5 megabytes in bundle, and you cannot do something with it. Absolutely cannot do something with it. And Fuzzer plugins cannot workable with Webpack. But in business application, I use Webpack for all. It's absolutely normal for me. But with Fuzzer, you cannot. And looks like you can find another packages on NPM that wraps some libraries in game development, some popular libraries, to make it workable with Webpack or with bundlers. And you have problems with typings, and looks like in game development it's better to use some constructor, some visual constructor to make something to test your idea. And after that, you just go to the coding with your head and go deeper, go deeper, and maybe after 1 year you can make something very brilliant, like an internal and external tool. But we have solution. I found them. We can use Webpack, we can use typings, we can use all that we really like. We can use just render of Fuzzer.js. It's a Pixie.js. It's a brilliant library for the rendering, because it can renders on WebGL or Canvas as a fallback. It's no problem to you. You don't need to learn WebGL to make something in two-dimensional world. And with them, you can use some packages that you can find on an awesome Pixies.js list on GitHub. It's a really awesome list of Pixie.js libraries that you can get to make your own game framework without 5 megabytes of strange or weird code. And you can use, for example, React Pixie. You can code on React your visual sense, your games, using just common React text using XML. It's a very good way better to you than using Fuzzer. And what I get from the testing, because if you finished your game, you should test your game. You should test your game as more as it possible. And looks just think about your MVP is ready, and it's players that can be good or bad for you, because you have a lot of problems with some different kinds of peoples because sometimes you focus on different things. For example, this peoples like that names discoverers. It's most kinds people. You can be. It's a polite people. It's a people that you want to talk a lot because it's very kind and glad to play your game. But it's not so. This guys is not helpful to you because you can get a lot of good news, but don't think about bad things. You found something like consumers. It's typical players. These guys want just fun of the game, just sitting and fun and very much fun. You just see on this people and once watch of them, watch how it plays, watch watch for this focus, watch which items, which stuff it's important for these players. And the more inconvenient guys, unfortunately, all of us can be these guys. It's the most narrowest people, the bug hunters. Sometimes I found guys that cannot play in my game because all 99% of guys have a good experience of my game, but 1% get worst experience of my game because all is not workable, a lot of unpredictable bugs and so on and so on. But this is the most helpful guys for you because a lot of unpredictable bugs can tell you about your focus is not in you're disfocused on your game and you start refactoring, but you should go to your bugs and do something with it. And I advise you test it on real people as fast as it possible. Just make your prototype and test it on the real people. Sometimes it can be not polite, but it can help with your game. And I think testing is a good thing because it shows your hidden issues, it focus you on really important things, and exactly it kick your ass. Because you should go to the players, you make a game for the player, not for yourself, for players. And as a final, I want to tell you about 18-20 rule. It means that 18 of your power, 18 of your power, 18 of your time, 18% of your time of power gets only 20% of result, and vice versa. And it means that to make a workable, playable MVP for gamers, it's only 20% of your time. Just focus on important things and start testing, and you get another 18%. And my another advice is make demos only, not finish your game because it takes more time than just make demo. But demo is funny, demo is good. And this useful links for you if you're interested about how to make games in JavaScript and games with coding. And I wait for your questions.
Okay, any questions? Okay, nobody. So thank you, Alex, for your presentation. Everybody, thank you for joining us here tonight. See you in November. If you have time, stay here and grab a beer or something.
Yeah, we can play in my game.
Or you can play a game with him.
In JavaScript, but we need 2 players with laptops.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.